But, like I said, there's definitely a tie at the top. It's funny that you mentioned, they're getting the job done without their best player. And I guess you could kind of bring this to our next topic, and that would be the New England Patriots. They have struggled to get it done without their formerly best player in Tom Brady. They were winning games or in close games with top contenders, and then they lost some questionable games, and then it looked like they were all ready for the tank, but then they've won the last two, and here we are. We're kind of in limbo, competing for playoffs or trying to get a better draft slot. We don't, things are all over the place right now in New England. But what I can say is that the Patriots definitely showed something interesting on Sunday night against the Baltimore Ravens. And we can talk about this a little in detail, but Lamar Jackson looks so flustered when he is kept as a pocket passer. It seems like he cannot live up to the task as a passing quarterback, and he needs to rely on his ability to run the ball in order to open up passing lanes for him, because without that, I don't think he can get it done like a Kyler Murray or any of these other standing in the pocket make any type of throw guys.
Well, I think speaking to the Ravens real quick, we as soon as we heard the news that Marshall Yonder retired, we knew this run game was going to take a major hit. And
Yes.
we see it. Lamar Jackson is just not the same runner. He's still...
And they lost their right tackle to opting out.
Right. So the entire right side has been completely... it's like a revolving door for them this year. And they're struggling to figure it out. I mean, we've only seen Lamar Jackson rush for over 100 yards once this season. And yeah, we're talking about the quarterback position, but we're also talking about Lamar Jackson, who did this every other game last year. Right. And to see him humanized this year, it's pretty surprising. After an MVP caliber season, having an MVP season last year, to this, it's crazy. And I think everybody's starting to learn not only how to beat this offense, but beat Lamar Jackson. And once you get this Ravens offense into a negative game script where they have to throw the ball, it's all but game over for them, because Lamar Jackson, yeah, he's fairly accurate, but he doesn't throw deep balls. He doesn't throw, these rocket arm throws. He'll throw the safe guy, the safety net, and he's not going to stray from that. He's not going to try to turn the ball over. And when you need to get a touchdown now, you're not going to get out of him most of the time. So
right,
these are things that were questions on him as a quarterback going into the draft, and there's still questions with him as a starter 2 years later. So
yeah, I mean, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, I'm not, but if I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, I as much as I don't want to make excuses for how poorly they performed, the weather was a major factor. You can't say it wasn't, even though both teams had to play in it. The Ravens their entire scheme was basically thrown out the window because they were only left with one thing, and that's running the ball. And if the Patriots were able to stop the run, it was going to be game over, and they were able to do just that. On top of that, it seems like the absence of Calais Campbell and the loss of Brandon Williams during the game definitely struck a chord with this defense and their inability to stop the Patriots' rushing attack. Specifically, Damian Harris for 3.5 quarters was unstoppable, rushing for $125. And then you had Rex Burkhead, who looks like he was shot out of a rocket every time he got the ball in the backfield. It's just one of those things where the Baltimore Ravens are in a serious amount of trouble if they can't get these issues rectified. And it's getting to a point where, you can laud and praise Lamar Jackson all you want. Personally, I'm not a big fan of his ability as a quarterback. I think he's a fantastic athlete. I just don't think he is a capable quarterback, which is why I think he was handed the MVP trophy last year. But we can get into that another time. My particular issue is that the Ravens offense becomes extremely stagnant, whether that's the offensive coordinator or Lamar Jackson's inabilities. And the defense has been getting shredded both on the ground and in the air because they can't generate pressure with 4. That's why they got Yannick Ngakoue. Then they suffer more injuries. It's just it's like one thing after another with this Ravens team. I have to imagine that there's got to be a line somewhere with John Harbaugh saying enough is enough. We can't keep making excuses, but I don't know what else there is for Baltimore to do. They've made the necessary moves at the trade deadline. They've tried to sign everybody that they possibly can under the cap. I don't exactly know what they can do more.
Yeah, I don't see the John Harbaugh or anybody in the Ravens front office moving on from Lamar Jackson for at least another 3-4 years. They're going to let him work through his rookie contract. He did have he was the last pick of the first round, so he gets that 5th-year option. So you still have 2 to 3 more years with him before you have to pay him. And they're going to use all of that time to figure out whether he's the guy moving forward or if we need to restart. And if he can't win you a single playoff game by then, you're going to know it's time to move on. So you'll know in a few years, nothing's going to happen between now and then. I want to focus more on the Patriots right now because they're in a very interesting situation. And like you mentioned, they would look like they were going for the tank earlier this year. They lost to the Broncos. They lost Cam Newton for the Chiefs game. And they were kind of spiraling out of control during those few weeks. And then they kind of brought it back. They barely squeaked by the Jets. Then they go out and beat the Ravens, which was a huge upset this past week. And now they're sitting at 4-5 with the potential to actually compete in this conference. I mean, we talked about the NFC West, which is very competitive. Let's talk about the NFC East, which is probably the most competitive Eastern Conference or AFC division right now. These teams are playing great right now. Miami is on the rise, just like Arizona. Buffalo's killing it, but they're kind of skidding right now. But they'll figure it out. They have Sean McDermott. The Patriots, Bill Belichick is figuring out how to play without Tom Brady, and he's slowly figuring it out, as well as Josh McDaniels. They figured something out in that Jets game. Josh McDaniels said he completely went away from his normal game script and came with a new plan for Cam Newton, and it's working so far. They're running the ball better, they're passing the ball better, and the defense looks like there's a fire lit underneath them right now.
And the Patriots have been doing this without Stephon Gilmore, without Juwan Bentley, plus all of the people that they lost prior to the season. If there was a built-in mulligan for any team going into the season, I have to imagine the Patriots had that. You lose the greatest quarterback of all time. You lose your defensive captain and juggernaut middle linebacker. On top of that, you have your starting right tackle and starting strong safety both opt out of the season. And there's constant turnover and no preseason. You had to bring in a new quarterback who couldn't learn the offense until 3 weeks before the season started with no practices. I mean, there's a whole hell of a lot. So I think they're still working through a lot of this stuff. My assumption is that things will continue to get better and better for the New England Patriots as they move forward. I think they need to focus on, doing what they can to get into the playoffs, and just competing and seeing, really gauging where the team is. Because if they can become a competitive team now, then they say, okay, what do we need to do? We need to get wide receiving and tight end weapons for Cam Newton. And we need to add a couple more pieces on defense. And I think they will be right back into the swing of competing for the division, competing for the conference, and then possibly competing for a title.
Right now, we got to also remember the Patriots are playing with the strongest strength of schedule. They have the hardest matchups moving forward. And as it stands right now, I project them to go either 8-8 or best 9-7 on the season, which could potentially make them get into the playoffs in that seventh seed. Do you think the Patriots should try to make the playoffs, or is it worth them sitting one out and getting a better draft pick?
As far as it's concerned right now, try to make the playoffs. I think you need to gauge everything that you have right now, because what I understand is that if you are going to try to get a better draft pick, the entire goal needed to be Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or Jamar Chase. All three of those players are now out of the conversation with the way the Patriots have played the last 2 weeks. So that'll bring up who are you going to grab? Some middle first round guy. I mean, you can possibly do that even by making the playoffs, because even if they miss the playoffs, they're only going to miss it by a game or two, and that means maybe 3 or 4 draft slots. Even if they have a guy that they like in the middle of the first round, they could end up trading up for him and not giving up too much, because, again, I don't see them competing in the playoffs, but I can definitely see them just showing up and showing out. I want to see if Damian Harris can sustain this ability to run. I want to see what they have in Rex Burkhead, if Sony Michel has a future in New England. I want to see if this offensive line continues to improve week after week after week. And then that defense, it's been a rotating door at the linebacker position all season long. Now they have Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche back there. They have Terez Hall leading the middle linebacking core. Let's see what those guys can do. Let's see what the pass rush looks like. Let's see if J.C. Jackson can hold on to the number 1 cornerback position. Jason McCourty looked phenomenal, but he's not going to be there for the long haul. Let's see if Joejuan Williams can take over. Let's see what these young guys that we have held in check for so long now, let's let them flourish. Let's let them compete and see how far they can take us. Because if they can start to flourish and show up, then we know, okay, this quote-unquote rebuild is more like a retooling. But if we just absolutely suck and these guys take over, then we need the full-on rebuild. It's time to just let loose, start garnering draft picks, and just, going out for the next 3 to 4 years of just draft talent and trying to find the next wave of possible championship window.
Yeah, even with everything the Patriots have faced this year, I think out of everything we can agree that the future is bright in New England. The dynasty isn't dead just yet. There are a bunch of young studs on this team that are going to flourish under Bill Belichick. I think this team is a few pieces away, or maybe a few healthy players away from truly being in the Super Bowl contention range with the Steelers and the Chiefs and the Bills. So I'm not counting out the Patriots as they're a wash, they're done, the dynasty's over. You don't have to worry about them for the next 20 years. This is still a team that is fully competing, and they are capable of doing so.
I mean, I may be a homer and I may be crazy, but my opinion is if you still have Bill Belichick as your head coach, that you're not completely out of any conversation as far as competition level is concerned. So I can imagine that just a simple retooling in this team can get right back. Defensively speaking, they held the Kansas City Chiefs in check. I'm sure they can hold the Pittsburgh Steelers in check. Maybe not this year, but next year or the year after. I'm sure that, a lot of these things are going to change. Big Ben Roethlisberger isn't going to be around for too much longer. Then, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to make some tough decisions in the next few years as far as the retooling of their team goes, because they're going to lose a player like Tyrann Mathieu. And then, Chris Jones is going to look for more money, even though he signed a new contract. I mean, these guys, they have so much money tied up already that they're going to have to continue adding either veterans at a minimum, or drafting top tier players and hoping that they work out as top tier players and then letting them go when their contracts are up. But I like you said, and I want to just reiterate, I think the future is bright for New England Patriots fans. They just need to weather the storm that is this year. We know that this year is completely different in all sports and all facets of life. And right now, I think that this is just a learning curve for the Patriots and the fans.